Welcome to the HawkCast with your host, AJ Hawk.
Linda Cohn joins us actually from a car right now for the people that are watching the video version of this. We set this straight, though. You're not driving, correct?
Yes, I would not put my life in danger at all at any time. I have pulled over in a comfy spot in mild weather in the pouring rain.
Now, where are you? Where are you located now that you're, I know you're doing a lot of West Coast SportsCenter. Do you live out there?
No, I would have liked to live out there, but that opportunity was not given to me at the long-term basis. So I am still in Connecticut, and it's like crazy. Like the weather's been nuts. I mean, today is like a super mild 55-degree day, but tomorrow I think it goes back to being winter.
Oh, okay. So what's your weekly schedule look like with ESPN? How does that, do they set that weeks in advance, months? Like, how do you know when you're going on?
Yeah, probably about like weeks to a month in advance. My schedule has recently changed. I was doing a lot of sports centers out in LA during college football season, which I truly enjoyed. Do want to live out there someday. But now I'm doing 11 p.m. Eastern sports centers, usually now as we move forward, at least for the present time. It's really, when you look around at anyone who watches Sports Center and watches ESPN, a lot of changes taking place. You turn it on. You never know who the heck is on. It seems like there's more and more of that, and people are talking to me about that, and I'm like, hey, I get it. I got to look at my schedule to see what time I'm on. Like, for instance, tonight, normally I'm on at 11 Eastern on a Friday. I'm on at 10 Eastern on ESPN2. So who knows? So
you don't really have – can you pick and choose, I guess, when you go on?
Not me, AJ. No. I'm sure there are some select few that have that written in their contract. But you know what? It's always been about where management feels that's best for me. And they love me doing highlights, so they got me doing highlights. And, when you think about it, 25 years ago when I started, that's what I was doing. Nighttime shows, late night shows, 11 p.m. Eastern shows, highlight driven, the way SportsCenter used to be when it was all about, the athletes and the games being played, as you remember.
Of course. I think I was right in that. So I'm 34 years old. I think I grew up. I just turned 34, and I grew up right in the heart of, I guess, when SportsCenter truly took off. And that's where everybody went, and you guys were all, you still are so visible and celebrities, basically, but they were the personalities on SportsCenter we like to watch. We watched it for our highlights, but everyone became big off of that SportsCenter, I feel like.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you did. I mean, listen, I've done several of your highlights. So let's not forget how great in your first part of your life and your first career that you had and all that, AJ. But that's what was always so great about SportsCenter, right? I mean, yeah, there wasn't a lot of competition. We all get that back in the day in the 90s and such when it really took off, as you mentioned, AJ. But the fact that we always wrote our own stuff, our own material, I'm not just talking about catchphrases. I'm talking about the art of the ad-lib, the art of a, on-camera lead-in into a highlight, the stuff that really, is journalistic quality. Plus, we were allowed to let our personalities show. So I felt most of us were not robots. Most of us were not, quote, talking heads, which, unfortunately, some of our colleagues penned that phrase, which was unfortunate. But, I think that was what the beauty of ESPN and SportsCenter was back in the explosion days, AJ, because our personalities were allowed to come out. And that was significant, and people gravitated toward that.
Is it not like that anymore? They don't suppress your personality, I feel like, but how is it different?
No, I think it's still the same. I do. I just think people had that core group that they were familiar with, whether it was Dan and Keith, whether it was, the late Stuart Scott, of course, Rich Eisen, myself, Kenny Mayne. So it was just a smaller amount of people. But I do believe, and I'll say this, I'm a sports fan first, AJ. So when I sit and watch someone that I haven't seen before, I don't want to hear catchphrases. I don't want to hear them force it. I don't want them to try so hard to impress me. Just get it right. Put the subject matter first before you. Let me get to know you. Then you can start, kind of slowly sprinkling in your personality until it fully blooms. Does that make sense?
Of course. Did you ever feel, I guess, not pressured, but did you ever try to, I don't know, push like to come up with catchphrases when back in the day with Stuart Scott and Dan Patrick and all these people are coming up with all these famous, like, their little one-liners. Did you ever feel
Yeah.
like, oh man, I got to come up with some myself?
Oh, absolutely. I wrote a tongue-in-cheek book about myself back in '08 called Cohn. And the reason why I wrote it was to let people in on some of the inside. But as I made fun of myself and my journey to where I, ended up right now, at least, or at least back when in '08 when I wrote the book. But in there, I have a chapter about that. And I talk about that I felt the pressure of like, man, everyone's got a catchphrase. And so the typical story that I always go back to is that there was a softball team that one of my friends played on, just fun softball team, people around the neighborhood, her friends, co-ed, and it was called the Master Batters. And I was talking to her once and I said, wow, that would be like a subtle way, back in the day, when Mike Piazza hits a home run, I could just say, Mike Piazza, Master Batter. So one night I did that. The next night, my boss at the time called me in his office and he's like, that catchphrase you're trying out? I never want to hear that again. So, talk about pressure. So that's kind of silliness. And then I just realized, the key is just being yourself. And that's never who I am. Choreographing a catchphrase, meaning, when am I going to use my money catchphrase? Which highlight? I was always about, I don't even want to see the highlight in advance. I just want to kind of get my own expression, whether high or low regarding what I'm talking about, and then let it just come, let the ad libs come, and not kind of have one phrase.
Do you guys still write your scripts, as you say? Like, say you have certain highlight packages that you will be presenting. Do you go in before and then write your script and then load them in the prompter and
basically what we do, AJ, and it's a great question because a lot of people think we, just show up and sit down and, handed stuff and then we just go, bleh, but like we're actually in early. We have a meeting. We'll see a rundown. And that's something that became famous on TV. One of our former bosses said, hey, let's put the rundown on the side of the screen to show the viewer what's coming up next. Well, that's kind of like what we had. And each anchor knows which game they're going to do, story they're going to do, highlight they're going to do in advance. Only sometimes, it's very rare, where at the last minute something is reversed or, the other anchor, does the highlight I was supposed to do. So, we have an idea, like, for instance, if I'm covering the Cavs Pacers tonight or something, I'm going to kind of research myself to find out, okay, Cavs stink on defense the last two games, blown out. They got problems. LeBron, blah, 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 went off on his team on the side, on court side. And you just kind of have that in the head. So I don't write that down, but I have that in my head when I'm doing a highlight, so I can sort of just ad lib over the highlight. Because a big thing about, and I tell young people when I do speaking engagements who want to be in the business, just to read the highlight, like if you're just reading what people are seeing, you're not bringing anything to the table. They see that, Kyrie Irving or whoever hits a three. You got to add to that, whether it's funny stuff or informative stuff or stats. It makes you look better. And if you could tell a story over a highlight, just like what I said, while LeBron's bringing it up the court, well, LeBron ripped his own teammates yesterday. It just makes you look better. So we do kind of have an idea of what we want to say and write, and maybe I'll write a little notes on the side of the shot sheet, as it's called, which is a thing that tells us which part of the video of the game is coming up, the best highlights. So that's what it is about now, where you're writing things, little notes, so you don't forget.
Is there any moments that you can think of over the years? You've been there for so long, and you guys tape live. Or, I mean, you do it all live?
We do it all live. Yeah. Sometimes, like the LA show, they'll do it live, and then they'll be repeated. That particular show is repeated all morning, usually early morning, overnight. Okay. And then they have a new fresh SportsCenter at 7 Eastern a.m. Back in the day, the late show was repeated all the way up at times, almost sometimes till noon, before they expanded to live morning SportsCenter. So all of it is live in some capacity, except for those few overnight shows.
I would think, especially when how much you guys are just kind of on the spot talking about the highlights. Don't people say things that get him in trouble? I can imagine just trying to continue to come up with things. I can't imagine not only like would you cuss, would you say something out of line that offends a group of people? Doesn't that ever happen?
I don't know. I mean, if it, I'm trying to think if that's ever happened to me, like live. There's been a couple of things.
If it was, it'd be online. So I mean,
yeah,
you
right.
seem to be okay.
The Twitter universe. The good thing about the Twitter universe, AJ, when you screw up a name phonetically, they'll be on my butt constantly. You hear Linda Cohn pronounce blah blah blah. I'm like, gosh, all right, thank you. And 9 times out of 10, unless they're jackasses, I will reply to them and say, hey, thanks for pointing that out. Appreciate you sharing it. I mean, we've all been there, right? I mean, type of thing. But I can't remember there's been the funny stuff, the classic joke that Steve Levy, and he makes fun of himself, one of my colleagues, back in the day when there was no social media, he referred to some football injury instead of a bulging disc, he called it a bulging dick. And so can you imagine if that happened in the day of social media? Yeah, that would be all over the world. So I think because of social media, all of us are extra cautious and know that the microphone is always on.
I would think the executives have to be kind of torn because stuff like that, although it could offend people or people can be upset, everyone wants something to go viral. Even like if a guy said a bulging dick, that's not a horrible thing. He didn't offend a big group of people,
right.
But it would go viral and get more eyes to the show or to that anchor. So I would think executives are kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah, I think that's a fine line. I think what executives do, and I can't speak for them, I am not one. And that's what's also funny about the Twitter universe is the fact that, they think because you're on TV and you're an anchor for a million years on SportsCenter that somehow I have the power of what is on TV. When this whole LeVar Ball craziness came out a year, it's over a year already, really. I mean, I was on the radio ripping this guy. Anywhere I could rip this guy. But when I go on TV at ESPN, I can't rip the guy. It's just a fact, But now ESPN is getting ripped, for sending Jeff Goodman, one of our star reporters, to Lithuania, to follow the kids' debut, the two Ball brothers' debut in Lithuania. And so, I have people reaching out to me. It's like, okay, just stop talking about it, So, type of thing. So there are some things that getting back to your point, AJ, about ratings and getting things viral. I think executives like some things that get their attention, that get other people's attention for the right or wrong reasons, but debatable topics like the LeVar Ball. Some people love this guy, believe it or not, and want to hear from him. And obviously, most of us do not. But that's a debatable topic that becomes viral. Like that guy is viral. Hopefully he's not contagious.
Yeah, so you say you can go on the radio. That's kind of interesting. You can go on the radio and
but not ESPN radio. You know what? I'll go on Sirius XM because I don't have a show on ESPN radio. But when I fill in AJ on Sirius XM on Mad Dog Radio, they pay me, as they pay you for your opinions. So that's what I do, and so far I'm allowed to do it.
Doesn't ESPN have opinions on what you or try to? Not censor you, but make sure you watch out what you say. I know Katie Nolan, who recently joined ESPN, that she went on Jesus and Mario and said something about Donald Trump, and they didn't suspend her, but they gave her, or they kind of said we talked to her about it, and she knows not to do this again. How are you? I don't know. How they can't censor what you say on other airwaves, I guess.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know. They could do whatever they want. I don't know her contract. I'm sure it's a wonderful contract and probably better than mine. But the point is that I'm sure there are things in there that say what she can or cannot say. Okay. When I go on the radio and show my opinions and express them, guess what, AJ? I'm talking about sports. Do you know why? That's what I cover. I cover sports. Okay. I'm not getting into politics. Okay. I don't think anybody needs to hear what I have to say about politics. And I think if you did a poll of, listeners, viewers, do they want to get their, opinions on politics from people they're used to getting their sports from? If they do, that's great. Fabulous. I applaud that. Wonderful. But that's just not me. I stay in my lane.
What about
That's what I get paid to do. Sports.
Everything is like kind of different things cross over now. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick's situation is like the number one thing, I guess.
Correct. Which when that came out, I was again on the radio. I was very vocal about that. You know, I stuck up for him. As a matter of fact, as a quarterback, as an NFL quarterback, there are ways you can express your opinion without getting into the politics muddle of it all, but more like finding a way to make it more sports oriented and saying, yeah, I think he is being, you know, blacklisted and not allowing an opportunity. And this was when that protest first started, because I thought if he had an opportunity, more opportunities, that whole thing, we'd be talking about his numbers and how he is in his comeback, as opposed to that he has chosen to kneel. Now, he could do whatever he wants. You know, I got ripped for Marshawn Lynch. You know, here's a guy that apparently was kneeling or not standing up for the anthem for a long time, but no one paid any attention to it until Colin Kaepernick took his, you know, stand and took a knee. But, you know, everyone's got an opinion, but that's okay. They could do what they want, AJ. That's fine with me. You know, I got into a little bit of hot water when I was on a radio show. I guess I found out later I was not supposed to be on the Bernie and Sid show on WABC radio. And it was the day after many of my friends got laid off from ESPN. And I spoke from my heart about that is so sad and unnecessary because of certain, you know, decisions that were made that were above my pay class. That led to that I felt that because of everything I read, and that was well documented, you know, that said they shouldn't have lost their jobs or got laid off. It was, I took it, it was sad. I felt for these people. So, you know, you just have to pick your spots. I learned from that. I learned that I wasn't supposed to say anything or be on that show. I get it. And I'm sure, you know, Katie Nolan, as you mentioned, was talked to. I'm sure she's learned from what she said and where she said it.
Are you referencing when you said what ESPN forgot their core?
I just basically said that I felt that, you know, and it was well documented that they overpaid for certain things, you know,
okay.
like the NBA and stuff like that. And then I got, you know, asked not to do the show the next day.
For one, wasn't it like one day? They say
it was
home?
one day. It was one day. Don't come in. Yep.
Just let this die down, or what is that? That's kind
it was weird. Just like, I want you to think about what you said.
Okay. I have kids. I put my kids in timeout sometimes. A similar thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know what they did to deserve that timeout, but I don't think what I said deserved the timeout.
Yeah, and you say you're not supposed to be on the show. How do you know what shows you can and can't go on then?
No, it was just the next show. Like I was scheduled to be on the show the next day.
No. I mean the radio show that you went on. You said you found out you weren't supposed to be on that show.
Oh, I did. Well, apparently I thought it was part of our the shows that we were supposed to go on because it was a WABC affiliate. And I always thought in the past ABC was under the Disney umbrella, you know, Good Morning America, ABC Radio, local ABC. But then I found out it was not. And I didn't know that. That's a great question. I mean, maybe I should have known it, but it's not like I do radio tours, you know, every week. So I had no idea. I was doing that spot for a friend, Sid Rosenberg, who co-hosts the show.
Yeah, it seems almost exhausting at times, I guess, because you know so many people in the broadcasting world. I'm sure you have so many friends and colleagues that host shows all over the place, and they want you to ask you to come on, just to think of how many times do I have to forward this email along to see if this is an okay show to do.
Yeah, well, guess what? I'm winging it with yours because I didn't ask anybody because I was like, okay, I don't care. You know, not that I don't care, but I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah, I haven't openly bashed ESPN or did anything to make or I haven't challenged their sponsors. I just don't mess with the sponsors. You can't do that. It's the number one thing.
Yeah, right.
I've
and
learned.
Again, I know that there it is. Exactly. I mean, we've seen that too. Yeah, that is a kind of strange thing where the money is, but whatever it is, it is. I don't know. You know, you brought up a good point before. There are so many blurred lines, and you know, it used to be a fine line. Now it's all blurred of what people can talk about and what's okay to talk about and what's not. And just social media has just really, really made it very challenging for not only people like us, but just for the average person, you know, who is, whether they're needing it for good reasons or bad. It's like, you know, it's like something like, I'm using this for good or evil. right? Like that
Yeah.
social media can be used for good, for charitable things, for sharing positive messages, and it can also be used for evil. And it's just, you have to, and being a parent, especially a young parent like you, there's a lot of life lessons there that my kids are grown that I didn't have to teach really young. I'd have to worry about my kid at the age of 10 says, I want an iPhone. I mean, I don't know how old are your kids, AJ?
My oldest is 7. Youngest is 8 months. So yeah,
Okay.
believe me, my 7-year-old daughter, she's pushing for that.
Yeah.
And we're not anywhere close to getting her a phone, but she knows how to work. She can grab our phone and knows how to unlock them and figure things out.
Yeah. So it's really kind of challenging for young parents like you nowadays, for sure.
It is. So you do work on Sirius. How I always was under the impression a lot of ESPN contracts are exclusive to that deal. So I do a lot of work with Fox and FS1, and there's a lot. I'm not full time with them, but I've called games on FS1 this year. You can kind of bounce around and do like I do a lot of shows on Sirius as well, and there's no real restrictions, but there's certain. I'm sure it goes person by person, but isn't there contracts that are exclusive to just ESPN properties?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was on SiriusXM a lot more than just Vacation Relief, I have a feeling they wouldn't let me do it. But it's really, I don't really do many shows a year, probably like 10 to 12, maybe sometimes 15. And that really isn't something where there's a flag that's raised with them. So I'm allowed to do it. But my first priority, of course, is hosting SportsCenter for ESPN. That is what I get paid to do. And that is what is always top of my list career-wise right now.
Has social media changed, I guess, how SportsCenter is run, or just, I guess, TV in general, to where executives may be swayed by the so-called Twitterverse if there is some fake outrage over something where they change programming due to responses?
Good question. I feel that they might make an entire 30-minute outside the line show because of something that happened on Twitter, or there's some outrage about something, because it's such a well done show, that outside the line show, usually hosted by Bob Lee, where you do want to sit there and get behind the topic regarding whatever is out there, whatever is happening, whether it's, sexual assault, which I think they did a segment on yesterday with this University of Minnesota kid basketball player, forgot his name, but he's a superstar. Several sexual assault allegations against this guy. And then Bob Lee had Kate Fagan on as an analyst to talk about it. And she brought up some great points. So yeah, I'm not going to lie, just as a viewer of the network, I've definitely have noticed that when something is hot on social media, I believe it's a great idea for TV networks to respond to it and make it a big deal, because obviously people are talking about it and everyone's looking for ratings. So you're looking to take what you get from your social media outlets, put it on, TV on the major network, which, by the way, can also be streamed live on the ESPN app. And that's it's already in my head, but that's true. Everything that is on ESPN is on the app, and that's where we're at. And that from, FS1, same deal.
Yeah. Oh, you're smart. You're a company lady. You're always plugging. You have to. I get it. How much longer are you going to stay at ESPN? You're still young and you've been doing it for 30 years, it seems like.
Yeah, 25 years. I don't know. I really don't. Actually, I'm going to have a decision probably in about a few months, because my latest contract is up in May, June. And so I'm looking forward to what's out there. And honestly, I've had this conversation with some people. I'm not really ready to call it quits, period. From working ESPN and broadcasting, I've been a pioneer, and it's so gratifying for me to see all these women on TV talking sports in all levels, in all ways, giving their opinions in all roles. It is just that's the best thing for me that I feel that I played a part in. I don't know how big or small, but I'm ready to go to another area and perhaps be a pioneer in another aspect or another area of our business or in sports. And I would embrace that and welcome that. I've always liked hockey. I played it, and when you play a game and you've played it all your life, you have an emotional attachment to it, and there's always passion there that doesn't die. And that's how I feel about the NHL and certain teams. So maybe something like that is in my future. But I don't know, or I could be back at ESPN hosting SportsCenter. You just don't know.
And another area, what would be another area? Would you ever go from like an on-air talent to one of the suits up top making decisions and be behind the camera?
You know what? I would have no problem with that at all. I'm pretty secure in myself where it's not something, TV and radio and ESPN has never defined me. I've never had ESPN on any Twitter handle or social media handle ever. I just feel that that just was the right spot for me at the time because I'm a sports fanatic, and ESPN was the place to be. And honestly, I'm glad I stayed 25 years because I raised my kids in one place, and my family, my children are always and will always be the most important, that I didn't just chase something and I stayed put. Now I gave up a lot of extra money, perhaps maybe more opportunities to do other things in the field for my kids to stay put in one place. And I see they still have the same friends when, why my daughter's 26, my son's 22, and it meant a lot to them. So I know I don't regret that, but who's to say why not? I mean, I look good in the suit. I mean, we'll see what happens, but it'd be really cool because that's what I mentioned about being a pioneer, to be a decision maker for a sports team would be incredible, or help grow a team or a sport or a league would be so gratifying. And also I always love, and understand the plight of the athlete. And I'm always been athlete friendly, even when I do highlights and everything, and the coaches and athletes and the game, so I would not say no to that.
Your kids are grown now. They could come visit mom out in LA. You should follow Ryan Russillo out there in whatever his new venture is going to be. And maybe you could work for the Kings, get a job up top with them, with the corporate guys.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do know Luke Robitaille, and he's one of those corporate guys. So,
Hey.
He wants me to dress up, return to my goalie roots and do a little emergency backup goaltending, or be a part of their morning skate. I'm still figuring out a day to do that. That'd be so much fun. But yeah, you never know. You're right. I should be Ryan. I could see Ryan Russillo, great guy, by the way. I could see Ryan Russillo. I mean, he should go into acting. I mean, he just has that, like,
He might.
I think he could do
sounds
anything.
Sounds like he might. Isn't he writing screenplays and stuff?
I think he could be in the front of the camera too. But he's a very talented guy, and I only wish him the best.
He's great.
And I applaud him. I applaud him because he wasn't given the opportunity. He was given a great opportunity. ESPN, he had his own show, great, whatever. But when you don't feel like you can grow in a place, don't be afraid to leave. I mean, that's always been one of my messages, and it's, I could be following my own advice, but if I'm not getting an ability to grow and be challenged anymore, why stay? And it may not be what you want right away. Like Ryan took off for LA, not knowing what he's going to be making, what he's going to be doing, but you never want to look back and say you didn't try to do something that really challenged you. You never want to do it because you'll regret it.
I think I really respect it. So I had Russillo on here a while back, and it was before or after his arrest. I think it was before, actually. And then I talked to him afterwards. And the reason I've always had a lot of respect for him, obviously he's great at what he does, but he's so honest and open. He came back. He got suspended a couple weeks. He owned it. He said, I know I'm going to be the butt of jokes for a long time, forever. My mugshot's out there. But he said, I'm highly embarrassed. This was an embarrassing situation. But I remember I texted him shortly after it happened, and I was like, hey, it could have been a lot worse, man. You didn't hurt anybody. You walked into the wrong condo. You were drunk. It happens to people. Like, it wasn't on the scale of what you could have done wrong to get suspended. That was very, very minimal. No one got hurt.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that's wonderful. It's a wonderful words you shared with him at exactly the right time, AJ. The thing is that, a lot of people unfortunately can relate. And they how many times we've all been somewhere, maybe alcohol's not involved, but a poor decision was made in our lives. We could have been, younger than we are now, whatever age. And we're like, wow, man, am I lucky. Phew. So people, all they were looking for is when someone messes up to take ownership. And we live in an amazing country where 9 times out of 10, there's a lot of forgiveness for that. So yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
As long as you own it, that's the thing. If you own it, you put it out there. And he was real honest about his departure from ESPN. He kind of was on air, walked people through the process and what he was doing, and basically explained what you just said earlier, and that he thanked ESPN. He didn't have to smear ESPN and kill them on his way out. He said, they gave me this great platform, everything I've done, but it's time for me to go and grow and try something else. And he was kind of anxious or almost scared about what he was doing, but he was really, really excited. And I was like, man, I wish I'd get to listen to his radio show and watch him on, I know they simulcast it, but who knows where he's going to pop up next.
And you know what? Here's the thing too. When people are afraid to venture out in some other vocation, always remember 9 times out of 10, you probably can go back to what you're doing. Maybe not at that original place of business, but you're good at something. So you'll find some way to build yourself back up. And that's what people cannot be afraid of. Like, I know, for instance, if I do venture out in somewhere else, I know I could find some work in broadcasting in some way. Or maybe I become a professor and go back to my alma mater, Oswego State, and help others and, to continue to help others, but this time really more hands-on as a college professor. And that would be so gratifying for me. So there's always something to do. Life is so amazing and wonderful. So without being like, whoa, Linda, you're sounding like, one of those life positive tweets I get every morning. But it's really true. When you reach a certain age, you really do think positively and look at, there are so many options. There's so many people that go whining and expect things to be on a platter for them, and they forget that they have to work for it. My brother's great. He's out in California, lives in Orange County. He has a practice out there, Cohn Health Institute, kinesiology, chiropractic, whatever. But here's what he always said to me. He goes, not once, he said, Linda, you should you should never forget the days you work 7 days a week to climb that mountain, to constantly climb, to get to a pinnacle, which at that point was ESPN. It's okay. You can go back to that. You can never forget. And I don't have to tell you, being a football player, the fight, the hard work. Who says that has to stop? Just because you reached a height of something, when did someone give you permission to make that stop? As long as it's not getting you sick, and as long as it's not taking you away from things you love, it's okay to continue to work so hard. Remember, that's what got you to where you are. And it was a good reminder, because we all feel like, hey, I've accomplished this. Shouldn't I be getting this? Well, not necessarily, and you can't compare yourself to other people. Even if you feel you're in your right and you do deserve it and you are valuable, you cannot compare yourself to other people, because everybody's got a story that we don't know about.
Did you come across Jerry Madelon at all when he was working at ESPN?
Yes, Jerry's a great guy. Talk about Mr. Positive.
Yeah.
I mean, he was, what's his saying? I should know it. Something about, he had it on T-shirts. Dominate life, I think it was. That was his phrase. I'm pretty sure that was it. Super guy. I'm a big fan of Jerry, and he was always supportive of me.
He's been he was a longtime ESPN person and was part of the layoffs years ago. However many,
right?
3
the
or 4
first kind of round of them.
Yeah, and I was at broadcast boot camp the NFL puts on 5 or 6 years ago, and Jerry was the first presenter, and he had a great PowerPoint slide and videos, and that's one of the first things he said is, don't ever, especially in the broadcasting world, don't ever compare yourself to other people or say oh, what is this whine, and
right.
say, why is this person getting this slot when I'm way better than them? And he's like, don't even start. It's not. Don't do it. And you're right. They all have a story. There's a reason they're there. You're not going to get any better if you're going to compare yourself to someone else that you feel you're better than.
And nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. That's number one. No one cares. No one wants to be around a whiner. Someone complains about stuff like that.
Exactly. I mean, you know that from playing football, in the locker room, it's the same, isn't it? I mean, it's the same culture pretty much. How come I'm not getting playing time? I work hard in practice. What's going on?
Yeah, you're right. Wow. So if if you do that 11 o'clock SportsCenter, are you the lead in to Scott Van Pelt?
Usually it's the lead in. I don't think I don't know Scott's schedule, but I don't think he works I think he works 4 nights a week. So I don't know. Sometimes I am. I did the show when was it? I think it was Tuesday night. I think it was. Yeah, Tuesday night. I did the 11. And John Anderson and I, yes, we followed this great finish between Michigan and Purdue college basketball. And it was great. We got the advantage of a great lead-in, which is a live game. Usually Scott gets that advantage, and more power to him. But we led into Scott, and that's fun. That was great. So, I mean, we had a less than an hour show, and that's usually what happens because Scott's usually on at midnight. I think Friday nights he's off, I'm guessing, because we have an NBA doubleheader on ESPN, and I think his show is primarily on ESPN. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
I don't know either.
Changes all the time, which is what we talked about at the beginning of this. I don't know.
Nobody knows now. So if you go on the 11 o'clock SportsCenter, what does your day look like? When do you get to the studio?
Well, they frown upon if we do not attend a show meeting, which takes place at 4:30. So, yes.
Can you Skype into that?
Yes. Well, I have I've even, here's the good news, AJ. I've been able to call in.
Yeah.
Which I still might try to do today. And normally I try to get in, if I didn't have that meeting, getting in at like 6 for a 10 o'clock. See, again, today it's 10. We're on a 10. So getting in at 6 p.m. for a 10 p.m. program is more than enough time. I think that is more than enough time. But to get in at 4:30, also I can't do it. Like a lot with my certain things that I have going on here, it's hard for me to do it. So if I'm able to call in, I'm going to call in.
So what do you do from 6 until 10?
So we sit. So we kind of we see it. We open up the computer and we see the rundown. See which games, where the producer puts which game attached to which name, and what we have and what we have to do. And honestly, we'll eat dinner at the cafeteria. We'll watch games. We'll watch the 6 o'clock SportsCenter, and then we'll start writing the show. The things that we do have to write, we'll write, and then usually I go into makeup about a half hour before I go on. So.
Wow. Do you show up dressed as what you're going to wear on air, or is all that there?
I do. It's just easier. Most of the time I do. I mean, the guys don't usually. I mean, I'll usually, but I won't. If you really, let's get down to the play-by-play. I'll wear what I'm wearing on the air, but I won't put on the high heels until the very last minute because they'll kill my feet. So I'll walk around with sneakers. I have the good old style New York City commuter look where I'll be dressed and then I'll have the sneakers on. And that's a good look for me because that's what I could live in sneakers or boots. And so that's what I'm usually walking in with. So most of me is dressed except for the makeup. And I'm just, back in the day, we never had anyone to do our makeup and hair. Now for the last decade, we've had that. Maybe the last decade or 12 years. And that's just something that I will never. As a matter of fact, when I walk away from ESPN, I will miss that the most. As a woman, not having to worry about, getting my hair and makeup done for television, that is a joy. Trust me. But, that was probably really top 3 things I will miss.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. What about, so the show ends. Let's say your show ends. Can you get out of there right away, or do you have to hang around and take care of stuff?
Yes. Get out of there right away. Bingo. Okay. Bing, 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 bing.
Get
out of there right away.
Go hit the big city, Bristol.
Yeah. Actually, no. Go straight home and go to sleep.
Yeah. What's it like living there? I know that's like ESPN is Bristol. Is that part of Connecticut? Like, what is it? I know you've been there for a long time.
AJ, most of us don't live in Bristol. Nothing against Bristol. It has grown, actually, around ESPN. Really has some nice restaurants and spots to go. But mostly people live around Bristol. More people live in places that called Avon. That's a popular place. I'm just throwing that out there. But it's closer to the Hartford direction, as opposed to me. I live closer to the New York direction. I go the other way. I'm a New York girl, as you can tell by the accent. So anytime I'm still about where I live, an hour and a half from New York City, but it's still better than being 2 hours away from New York City. So, and I grew up on Long Island. So anytime I could be closer. My daughter works in New York and, stuff like that. My son goes to, he's in Pennsylvania. He goes to Slippery Rock University. I'm sure you're familiar with that. And so there's that.
Did they, when you were coming up, did they ever try to get you like a dialect coach and try to give you like the old no accent Midwestern type, no, get this New York out of you?
Yeah, it's funny for doing TV, and I talk about it in the book Cohn that I wrote. When I was at Oswego State, the college I went to, which is near Syracuse, New York, great professor I had. His first name was Fritz, Dr. Fritz Mazier, and he did TV production. And he said to me, if you want to lose your accent, any accent, doesn't have to be just New York, any accent, you have to talk slower and open your mouth wider when you speak. And that combination of doing it, so it became very natural for me to lose my accent, except for certain words on TV. And then you see now, as I'm talking to you, like I'm talking to a buddy, or if I'm talking on the radio, I just talk faster, still clear, but the accent will come out more because I never, AJ, wanted to lose my roots. Mm-hmm. I never wanted to hide where I was from. I'm proud of where I was from, which is New York, and growing up on Long Island. And I never wanted to smother that. That's
a thing. Like, New York is its own little planet, I feel like. In a prime example, I feel like, in a guy that just stepped off his gig was Mike Francesa. His whole situation. I never really listened to. I know he's such a New York thing, but it got so much national attention. Is Francesa, and he has a thick accent and he has strong beliefs. But I watch a lot of clips of Francesa online because I think he's hilarious how he interacts. Yeah. But that's like, New York is it's a weird spot. There's a reason that it is like the media capital of the nation, of the world, basically, with so many different people coming in and out.
It is. You can find that also, like, people that are from Boston will make that same case because they're so passionate about their teams. Like, I grew up so passionate about my teams and still am. And I think Mike Francesa, just to name one of the obviously legendary radio hosts, along with Christopher Mad Dog Russo, who is on Sirius XM now. And of course, they were a team for so many years. They did a 30 for 30. It
was good
on those two guys, which was fun, right? Which was great. But they are the reflection of the sports fan. They are the voice that we all loved hearing because they pulled no punches, which was so great about them. When one of our teams would have an awful game or an athlete would have a bad game, they would rip the athlete, rip the coach, rip it's everything that we as fans would be thinking. Not that we know anything because we're not in the locker room. But they would try to get to the bottom of it. And especially those two guys, they were the first debate guys because they never seemed to agree. So now, that's such a big deal now for years and years, the last decade, about debate shows on television, whether it's First Take or PTI or all these kind of shows. It was always the radio guys like the Mike and the Mad Dog who were the first to do that back in the, whatever it was, late 80s until they stopped being together. And that's what fans love. They want to hear that. They don't want to hear like Homerville, talk show host just sticking up for what's good. Like if you were doing the games, like if you're doing color or play-by-play of the games and you're working for that team, you have to, of course, always protect that brand and protect that team. And I get that. But when I'm talking about the role as a sports talk show host, and in New York, it does seem to just go to another level. And it's hilarious. And it's also hilarious how he deals with callers. Oh, that's always the funniest part.
The callers that mess with him. That's my favorite thing, is the callers that call in and mess with him. And once he figures it out. Yeah,
he takes them down to size. It's so great. Because a lot of them are clueless. So that's another thing that, we as fans love, because that's why they call them fans, right? They're fanatics. But many of them don't know what they're talking about. I say this all the time for the teams that I love, whether it's the Giants, the Knicks, the Mets, the Rangers, or whoever it is, half of the fan base, I mean, they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, and I've ripped my own fan base, so, I mean, it's so true though. So in New York, it just goes to another level. And that's why he's been so successful and has been, because he stirred it up, even with his callers, even with guys that love him and called in.
I don't think any of us really know what we're talking about when it comes to other teams, other sports. Like, I've been in situations where someone can tell us exactly the mistake that was made, like a TV guy can, and I'm thinking, like, hey, I'm on the team, and we don't really know where the breakdown was. Like, we're going to get in the film room and watch this next day, and we're going to have to watch everything and see all 11 guys to really understand where the breakdown was. But you're going to tell me live on the spot watching the game that you know exactly what happened?
Right. Great point. You got to sit there in those team meetings and watch film and have your coach say to you, do you see this? And they have to draw a little. And then today's announcer, even the play-by-play guy is like, well, but I just feel there's a lot of pressure on, as you know, analysts now that you're on the other side, to have an opinion. And you have to have an opinion right away. Is that a crappy call? Is that not a call? Is that not a catch? Is that a catch? Is that this? Is that that? Because the viewers want to know, and or the listeners want to know what your opinion is. And you have to roll the dice and hope it works out, because on social media, you will be proceeded to get ripped, obviously, if you said the wrong thing and it turns out to be, the wrong call. And it's funny because, this whole love fest, and I have to say I'm part of the love fest. Tony Romo, his first year as being color analyst for CBS, along with Jim Nantz and kicking Phil Simms to the curb, he was like nonstop watch TV. Like, I love listening to him, whether he knew what he's talking about or not, but I love the way he handles stuff when he's wrong. Like, when, for instance, with the situations, obviously with just naming one situation, I think it was with the Kelvin Benjamin non-catch for the Bills against the Patriots. And obviously that looked like a catch to all of us, and Tony Romo and Jim Nantz said, oh, that's a catch. That's not going to be overturned. There's no conclusive evidence. Boom, overturned, no catch. Advantage Patriots. So, but I love how he handles that. So they're paid, as you got to make an opinion, right or wrong, and just roll the dice.
Was it always like that? Did people always have to have, and not like a hot take on, but did you always have to have an opinion like that if you're a color analyst? And I know the shows weren't around back then, like the head-to-head argument shows, but was it always that way?
You know what? When I think back in the day, I believe it was. It just wasn't as big a deal because that was the only, unless you were watching that game, you were the only ones that heard that opinion, because there was no social media. There was only word of mouth saying, did you hear what so-and-so said? Whoever's doing Monday Night Football back in the day. I mean, Jaws was in the booth, Dan Fouts, whoever it was, but there wasn't any social media, repeating it over and over again and showing the video and then hearing the audio of like whoever it is, whether it's Tony Romo, whether it's Chris Collinsworth, whoever the heck it is, saying something over the video. So again, social media, it's making it very challenging to do our business.
What are you guys going to do? I'm sure that's, especially if you're going to transition into this executive role, who are you going to bring in the booth for Monday Night Football now that Gruden took off?
I don't know if I'll be an executive at ESPN. Let's make that clear.
Peyton, bring Peyton. Throw $100 million at Peyton. Bring him in.
Yeah, that's crazy talk. I couldn't, but it's reality. I love John Gruden. I love him. He's always been great to me, and I wish him the best. Behind closed doors, I'm sure he says, I can't believe they paid me $100 million. But listen, why frown upon it? If somebody's paying you that much money, God bless you. Go for it. He's still got to win. I don't know who they're going to put in the booth. I mean, send your resume, AJ. I mean, I don't know what's happening. I really don't know. I don't know if they want to make a splash and get a big name. I don't know. Peyton Manning, I would think I would make a call to. He's good on TV. But maybe that's just with commercials. I don't know. Or he could be boring. I think they're going to need, if I was the new executive of ESPN, I would look for a big name because ratings are not the best. I'd actually probably, change the whole thing up. I would just bring in, I don't know. I don't know what Sean McDonough's deal is as play-by-play, but if I really wanted to make a big splash, I'd bring in a whole new team. Would
you have a 2 or 3 man booth?
I'd just keep it to 2.
Yeah.
Too much talking.
I agree.
Yeah.
I've done some 3-man. I've done a lot of 3-man games, and I've done actually with former ESPN guy Danny Cannell. I did a lot of games with him this year.
Danny's great. Great.
He's awesome, but 3-man's actually tougher especially the college game is so fast and the tempo. It's hard to really feel out exactly when you can. And it's just there's too many mics in the room. It makes it more difficult, I believe. And
you step on each other.
Oh yeah, and ESPN when they had I don't think they're I like Dennis Miller, but when they had Dennis Miller in the booth, it was
You remember
three-man.
that, right?
Of course, yeah. I was a Dennis Miller fan, so I thought it was funny, all his weird off-the-wall comments he would make, but it didn't last real long.
It didn't resonate, unfortunately. I, too. The only thing I had a problem with Dennis Miller, I thought he laughed at his own jokes too much.
Yeah.
Like,
that nobody else got him either. That's the problem.
Right. I think that's probably it. I think because no one else was laughing, he had to laugh at them to let people know it was actually a joke he just said. So, but I love that experiment. I don't know if they're going to do that, but in this day and age, when you're trying to get ratings, I wouldn't be surprised if they,
you're right.
Again, got a comedian. Who knows?
I think you're right. They're going to have to really almost rebrand it to where, because we all know like how Monday Night Football, a lot of it depends on the games you're getting. And if the games can look good going into the season, but if those teams aren't playing well, it's just it's kind of luck of the draw almost after that. So they do have to kind of I would imagine they want to make a splash, and it'd be a big time news. Oh, did you hear who's in the booth this year? What they're going to do? Man, I'm interested in seeing that, and people will tune in, and if they're good, they'll continue to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's not only an ESPN challenge; it's all the networks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not only the NFL; it's all of the sports where you can't rest on your laurels the way it's always been done. You have to do something else to make someone want to sit on their couch and watch it, or stream it live on their app, whatever it is, because, if you keep it the same, you're going to lose. And no matter what it is, you have to keep evolving. You have to keep staying ahead of the game, because you're going to fall into last place. You really are.
Have you put your name in the hat to take over John Skipper's gig, the departed president?
You know what? I really should. Do I have your vote?
Yeah, I got you. Let's put it out there. I think you should float that up there to the boss.
Listen,
maybe when you go in tonight, float it out there. Hey, I'm available, just to let you know.
Yeah, I will. Okay, I'll have to find the right people to send that message to. But yeah, maybe I'll just tweet it out.
Or
That'll
say
work really
say it on
well.
SportsCenter. Throw it into one of your highlights.
Yeah, it'll probably be the last highlight I do.
All right, Linda, I'm gonna start to wrap this thing up. But you did get inducted the National Sports Media Association Hall of Fame in 2017. What did that mean? Was that a big deal for you?
I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, I mean, that was crazy. I remember when I first got the call that I was being inducted, and I didn't pick up the phone. Like, I didn't know who it was. I was like, what's this number? I mean, poor Dave, who runs the whole thing, he's like, it took me four calls to get a hold of you, So I was like, you know what? It's something, and you know what this is like, AJ, like, for instance, it was such a great honor, but I don't think about it, stuff like that, until I retire. I sound like an athlete, but that's how I feel. Like, until I hang it up for good and I'm on a beach, in Orange County, California somewhere, in Laguna Beach, my future home,
Yeah.
Then I will look back and say, that's pretty cool. I guess I did make an impact, type of thing. But what was great about it was was being recognized while I'm still in it, I was very appreciative. I thought that was very cool, but I was truly honored. So yeah, it was very cool.
I think that's the best part, that you get recognized while you're still in it. It's not like you're 80 years old,
right?
And you get this. It's cool to be still actively engaged in the profession, and for as long you can go, as long as you want, you can continue to work, and you have this honor.
Yeah. And that's what I kind of, and then to share it with people that you love was cool. And, I had some people there that meant a lot to me. And, and then there was so many people there, like people in the business that I love seeing there. So it's a great thing. Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Well, you are at Linda Cohn on Twitter. I'm sure if people want to get your hot takes.
Instagram too. I'm not as busy on Instagram, but
are you
maybe
same name? Linda Cohn on Instagram?
At Linda Cohn. Yeah, pretty simple. Yeah, what are you? You're pretty simple
I'm
too,
at
right?
official AJ Hawk. I was late to the Twitter game, so it was I don't know what.
Someone stole your name.
Yeah, I don't know who has AJ Hawk, but I'm official AJ Hawk.
You're the only AJ Hawk.
There you go. Yeah, not on Twitter. I'm not. That's for sure. All right.
They're not verified. You are. So there you go.
Linda, appreciate your time. Thanks for being so fun and honest, and we look forward to seeing what your career is going to look like here 6 to 12 months from now. It may look drastically different.
Thanks so much, AJ. I so enjoyed it. You are awesome, and best of everything to you wherever your road leads. And you are on your way, my friend.
All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Talk soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
We're glad you could join us for today's conversation. After you subscribe to the show, head over to thehawkcast.com or reach out to AJ directly on Twitter at @officialAJHawk to recommend future guests that will help us inspire people to keep talking. Thanks again, and we look forward to speaking with you next time on the HawkCast.